Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And it's not good to listen to my presentation after the meal because there will be a lot of picture more than the letters. The torture situation in Thailand, I think I will not talk about the pattern of the injury or the incidents of the torture. But for me, I want to find out how we can change the system of the investigation. Our Institute of Forensic Science was established under the Ministry of Justice for 10 years. I'm the forensic pathologist who worked for this field for 30 years. The first 10 years under the public health and the second 10 years under the university. And that's why I have to move to be here, because I think forensic science service should be independent from the power of the police. Our institute have the service of the forensic science, which include forensic medicine and forensic science together. And the situation of the forensic science in Thailand are as following. First of all, our authority is the police system. It's the same as in Asian country. And secondly, the investigative system, the police officer familiar to rely on witness more than the scientific evidence. So it's very difficult how to introduce the scientific evidence for the investigation system. And for the third one, we need to have the registration system and need to have the guideline of practice. For the fourth, we have the problem of lack of attention. Sometimes the police officer have to pay their own money for the investigation. I mean that to send the sample for the DNA extraction. And sometimes the victims have to pay for themselves for the justice. So no one take the ownership. And for the next, it's about the balance of the power, especially in the case that death in custody or extrajudicial killing, because we are the police system. The police is the first one to investigate, collect the evidence and analyze the evidence and then summarize the case. And for the last one, within 10 years, we try to do the development in the forensic science. Right now, we start the projects of the Missing Person Center under the Institute, and about the forensic science training, and for the national DNA database, especially the work in the south of Thailand. And right now, we support the government and the military in the intelligence work. For the topics of the torture, I think for the victims, for the living victims, we have an NGO, we have a National Human Rights Committee, we have a councils of law for the people to ask for help. But for the death, I think we have no venue to help all of this. So in the case of the torture, I will talk about just only the case of the death. In the Thai criminal law, we have two categories for the post-mortem investigation. First of all, it's unnatural death, which includes 5 subjects. Secondly, is the death under the custody of the government officer. And in the case of death under the custody of the government officer, 10 years ago, we add the details about the officer who involved in the investigation. First of all, there should be the forensic doctor or the local doctor. Second, it's a local police officer. Third, it's a prosecutor. Lastly, it's a staff from the Interior Ministry. But I think we cannot change because everything depends on the police only. This is an example of the extreme case of the death in custody. A man was found dead in the cell of the police just only 3 hours after the arrest. The four of the team, I mean the doctor, the police, the prosecutor, and the interior officer, agree with the police that it's an asphyxial death. And the relatives of the death didn't believe, so they sent the body to the Ministry of Justice. And we found blunt injury on the chest wall, on the body, on the hand, and with the cigarette butt injury somewhere. And more than that, in the genital area, we found it's a piece of melted plastic, I mean from the boil plastic, dropped on the genital area, which in some area show inflammatory reaction and in some area show no inflammatory reaction, which means that this might happen at the time of death. But the cause of death was the rupture of the heart. The posterior wall of the heart show rupture. So in this case, we conclude it's a blunt force injury. Someone might jump on the chest, and that guy should did the case with the one who dropped the melted plastic on the genital area. But in this case, the local police officer sued me. But right now, I was found no guilty anymore. For the second topics of the torture, it's an extrajudicial killing. This man was found dead. The police said that he fight with the police, so he was shot. The first autopsy was done by the police forensic doctor. But 3 months after the death, the relatives didn't believe. So they brought the body and asked for a second opinion through the counsels of the lawyer. So we did the second autopsy. And you will see we found the remains of the bullets, which the first doctor didn't find. Secondly, we found the piece of cloth with the bullet hole inside the body. This piece of cloth should be the evidence. Lastly, we found that the content in the stomach was very well preserved, which means that the time of death might be just only within 1 hour after this meal. And the wife of the death, she told that he had that meal with the wife at 4 p.m. And the time of death that the police said that it's an 11 p.m. So, for the write down. So the representative of the counsels of the lawyer and the relatives of the death went to the scene again. And 6 months later, they found the blood stain on the dry glass in the other area, which is not in the area that the police said that the place of death. In this case, the relatives of death tried to fight through the court, but 3 years later, he had to accept the money from the police, 3 million baht, and the case was released from the court. For the missing person, the relatives of this group was disappeared for 7 years. And 7 years later, they heard that someone found the body was buried under the ground. So they claimed that the body belonged to the relatives. And they sent the body to the police department of forensic in Bangkok. And after the first investigation, it was claimed that the body belonged to the missing. But 2 months after that, the police called the body back for the DNA confirmed. And 8 months after that, they cannot get the DNA profile, so they refer the case to the Ministry of Justice. And we analyzed the DNA from the body and from the skull. The DNA of both of these belong to different people. This body we've got from the Police Forensic Institute. For the unidentified remains, Each year we have about 10,000 of unidentified remains all around the country. And in some area, in the lowest, you see the lowest right, we call it a killing field. In the area near the Burma, or maybe near the Cambodian, or maybe near the Malaysia, we can find a lot of the unidentified remains. And in the issue of the war on drugs, on the year 2003, the government set up the campaign to get rid of the narcotics, so we call it a war on drugs. And on that year, we found 3,000 died from shooting without full investigation. And the majority of the case, we found the plastic bag with the methamphetamine inside the bag. And until now, we found no one involved in this. And for the special case, he is a Muslim lawyer who involved in trying to fight for the torture. And he was kidnapped by the police officer and disappeared forever. And the Human Rights Committee tried to ask for the further investigation. So for the Forensic Science Service, our institute support the Human Rights Committee. And every time when we try to find out the human remains, I try to find out the pointer. You see, we found a lot of piece of bone under the water, in the jungle, and these pieces of bone belong to the same people, but not the lawyer. But until now, for me, I tried to do the further investigation, but no permission from the minister, even the Ministry of Justice. And after missing of the lawyer, the crime in the south exploded. A lot of cases, especially the bomb, happened in the southern part of Thailand. And right now, there are a lot of torture cases. Not just only the government officer, not only the government officer did that, but the insurgent did that too. In the top right is a picture of the neighbor who was tortured by the insurgent. So you will see that how can the forensic science help? I think we have to point out to the public about the human rights issue. We need an independent forensic unit. We need a well-trained forensic team. We need a specific law, or maybe the constitution law. And the most important, I think, it's a government policy. It's a political. It's a good governance. And for our country, I think it's education of the people, because if we have a well-educated, we can protect our rights. And for the international cooperation, we've learned that we try to establish the new system of the forensic science. Right now, we can have a identification center project, which our institute will take charge in about the crime scene investigation and scientific part. In Thailand, all the unidentified remains will be sent to the Chinese foundation and to keep the body for 5 or 10 years. And after that, we'll cremate it, all of this. All of the pieces of this will be cremated. We have no law, we have no regulation, but for me, I try to fight for this. And right now, we can stop this process in some area. And we have about thousands of unidentified remains that are cleaned up and wait for the anthropologists to analyze and to do the further investigation. This is a system. Secondly, we try to put the Forensic Science Standard Act through the cabinet, through the parliament. Just want to generate the system of the expert registration to develop the system to meet the international standard, or maybe to add more the professional fee. And for the international cooperation, maybe we need the policy from the international human rights standard to set up all of this. And lastly, I've learned that councils of Europe set up the protocol or the guideline of practice for the unnatural death investigation or for many, many things. And maybe it's time for the country in Asia to set up the councils of Asia. I think we have to gather the power of the forensic science community to put pressure on the government to improve the forensic science service. This can prevent the torture in the future. Thank you.